It was a cold, rain-swept evening when Daniel Parker's life quietly changed forever. The storm outside seemed to echo the one inside him, a mix of exhaustion, loneliness, and quiet despair that had followed him ever since his wife passed away 2 years ago. The power had gone out in his tiny, run-down house on the edge of town, and the only light came from a flickering candle he'd placed beside a bowl of instant noodles. His 7-year-old son, Liam, was wrapped in a worn blanket, coughing softly from the chill. Daniel tried to stay strong for him, even though every day felt like a battle. Between bills, his low-paying construction job, and the endless ache of doing it all alone. That night, he never imagined that a single knock at his door would turn his whole world upside down. Before we go further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of good hearts meeting at the right time, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel. It helps us bring more heart-touching stories like this one to you. When Daniel opened the door, he found a young girl, no more than 10, soaked to the bone, shivering and clutching a small backpack to her chest. Her brown hair was plastered to her forehead, her shoes were muddy, and her wide eyes glimmered with fear. She stammered out that she'd gotten lost after running away from a car accident nearby. Her name was Emily. Daniel hesitated for a moment. The world wasn't kind to strangers, and kindness had cost him before. But looking at her trembling frame, he couldn't just send her away. His father's words echoed in his mind, "Never let your heart turn cold, son. Even when the world does." He let her in, offering her one of Liam's old sweaters and a warm towel. The tiny home suddenly felt smaller with the three of them there, but also strangely fuller, warmer. Emily barely spoke as she sat by the candlelight sipping on a cup of instant soup. Liam, curious and innocent, offered her his favorite toy car to make. Her smile. It worked. For the first time that night, Daniel saw a flicker of comfort on her face. The storm raged on outside, but inside that humble home, something softer was beginning to stir. A quiet human kindness that would soon ripple far beyond that night. Daniel laid out a spare blanket for Emily on the couch, and promised her they'd figure everything out in the morning. She nodded sleepily, her eyelids heavy. After he tucked Liam in, he sat by the window, listening to the rain and thinking about the girl. What kind of world left a child wandering alone on a night like this? He didn't have much, but what he did have, shelter, warmth, care, he was willing to share. That was the kind of man he wanted his son to remember him as. The next morning, the storm had passed, leaving behind a washed-out sky and muddy streets. Emily looked better after a night's sleep. Over breakfast, just bread and peanut butter, she spoke a little more. She said she was traveling with her father when their car had broken down on the highway. She'd wandered off to get help but got lost when the rain started. Daniel's stomach sank as he realized her father must be out there, desperately looking for her. He borrowed his neighbor's old phone. His own had been disconnected for weeks and called the local police. When they heard Emily's name, the officer's tone shifted immediately. They told him her father had been searching all night, and that he was someone important. Daniel didn't care about that. All he knew was that she was safe now, and that was enough. Within an hour, a sleek black SUV pulled up outside Daniel's old wooden gate, its tires crunching against the gravel. 2 men in suits stepped out first, followed by a tall man in his 40s with sharp features and tired eyes. He looked like he hadn't slept at all. When he saw Emily step out of Daniel's doorway, his composure broke. He ran to her, dropping to his knees, pulling her into a tight embrace that said everything words couldn't. Daniel stood quietly by the door, unsure whether to step forward or disappear into the background. The man introduced himself as Richard Cole. The name rang faintly familiar. He was the owner of one of the biggest real estate firms in the state. A millionaire, a man who lived in a world Daniel couldn't even imagine. Richard's voice trembled as he thanked Daniel for saving his daughter's life. He offered him money, more than Daniel had seen in years, but Daniel shook his head. He told him softly, "You don't need to thank me, she just needed a place to stay. Anyone would have done the same." But the truth was, not everyone would have. And Richard knew it. He looked around Daniel's small, broken home, the leaky roof, the cracked walls, the empty shelves, and saw a man who had given without hesitation, even when he had so little himself. Something about that struck him deeply. He handed Daniel his business card and told him to call if he ever needed anything. Daniel smiled politely and pocketed it, not thinking much of it. He had more immediate worries: his rent, his son's school fees, and how to keep food on the table that week. Life went back to normal, or at least Daniel thought it would. Days passed and Daniel returned to his routine. Up before sunrise, off to work on construction sites, returning late at night with aching muscles and just enough pay to scrape by. Liam always greeted him with a tired smile, and that was enough to keep him going. But then, one afternoon, as he was coming home covered in dust and sweat, he saw the same black SUV parked in front of his house again. Richard Cole stepped out, this time dressed more casually, holding 2 cups of coffee. Daniel was immediately uneasy. He wasn't used to men like Richard visiting his part of town. But Richard smiled warmly and said he wasn't there for business. He was there for gratitude. He told Daniel that ever since that night, Emily hadn't stopped talking about him and Liam. She'd drawn pictures of them together, saying how kind they were and how safe she felt in their home. Richard admitted that her words had made him realize something. Money could buy comfort, but it couldn't buy humanity. And Daniel had shown his daughter what true kindness looked like. They sat on Daniel's small porch talking for hours. Richard learned that Daniel had once dreamed of starting his own construction company, but life had other plans. When his wife got sick, every dollar went into hospital bills. After she passed, he was left with nothing but debt and a little boy who looked up to him like he was the whole world. Richard listened quietly, deeply moved. A few days later, Daniel got a letter in the mail. Inside was a formal job offer, an opportunity to work at one of Richard's new housing projects as a site supervisor. It came with good pay, full benefits, and a chance for growth. At first, Daniel thought it was a mistake, but when he called the number, Richard himself answered. "It's no mistake," he said. "You've earned it, Daniel. You helped me find my daughter. Let me help you find your way back." Daniel accepted, though part of him still felt undeserving. He promised himself he'd work twice as hard to prove it wasn't just pity. Over the next few months, life began to shift in ways Daniel had only dared to dream of. He moved into a modest but comfortable home closer to the city, where Liam could attend a better school. He found pride in his work again, managing crews, earning respect, and slowly rebuilding his confidence. Emily often visited with her father, bringing small gifts for Liam and homemade cookies for Daniel. Their friendship grew naturally, bridging the gap between 2 very different worlds. But what touched Daniel most wasn't the money or the job. It was the way Richard and Emily treated him and Liam like family. On weekends, they'd all share dinner together. Emily and Liam would laugh and play in the yard while Daniel and Richard talked about life, loss, and second chances. 2 fathers, from opposite ends of the world, bound by one act of kindness. Months turned into a year, and Daniel was eventually promoted to project manager. He finally paid off his debts, enrolled Liam in a music program, and started saving for their future. Sometimes, late at night, he would look out his window and remember that stormy night, the knock at the door, the scared little girl, the choice he made. He realized then that kindness truly had a way of coming full circle. One small act had not only saved a child but had rebuilt a man's entire life. If this story touched your heart or reminded you that kindness still exists in this world, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe for more stories that inspire the soul. Before the story ends, we'd love to know, what would you have done if a lost child showed up at your door on a stormy night? Comment your thoughts below. Your words might inspire someone else to choose kindness. On a quiet evening not unlike that first one, Daniel watched Liam and Emily chase fireflies in the backyard. Richard sat beside him, smiling faintly. "Funny how life works," he said. "Sometimes the people we're meant to meet find us in the most unexpected ways." Daniel nodded, his eyes soft. "Yeah. That night I thought I was helping a little girl. Turns out she helped me too." The 2 men sat in silence, watching their children laugh under the fading sunset. There was no storm now, only peace. And in that simple, golden moment, Daniel finally understood that even in life's darkest nights, a single act of kindness can light the way home.